Now, I don't know where Mr. Smith is in his class, all right, but I'm planning on getting through as much of the book as we can. That said, there's 18 chapters. We don't have 18 weeks. So some of it we're going to go through kind of quickly, all right? Anything that we blast through, you know, what I'll do is cover anything that might be, you know, for a test. What I'm planning on doing, we're not going to have pre-tests, but every time that we have a test in here, from now on, to my knowledge at least, every test that we have will be a hands-on test where you'll be creating an app. And what I'm hoping we're able to do is the day before or 2 days before, create one in the same vein. All right? So if you look on this on here, because I'm going to break it down the way they broke it down. So we're going to go through chapters 1 and 4 today, 2 and 3 tomorrow. All right? You're going to have at least 2, if not 3 days then next week to just sit there and start playing with this stuff. Again, that's where you're going to learn. Let's face it, that's the way it is. All right? And I don't know when, but it'll probably be somewhere around maybe 2 weeks from tomorrow, or maybe even a little earlier. We'll have a test then on chapters 1 through 4. All right? And it will be either create this app or I'll give you 2 small apps to create. All right? I will also tell you, you know, again, there are going to be times in here where I'm going to tell you how to do something. You're going to figure out another way that's going to be just as good, if not better. All right? That's cool. I have not only do I not have a problem with that, that's great that you're doing that. All right? I'm sure that as we go through this, there will be some shortcut or something I forget to tell you. I'm never going to do that on purpose. I want to give you as much knowledge as I have. All right? So chapter 1 today, we're going to do this now because Matt's stuff is still loading. And it really, you don't need a computer for it. All right? So we're going to just go through chapter 1. And then we're going to go through and actually build some stuff and then go back to chapter 4 where they talk about testing and debugging. All right? So that's what we're going to do for the next week or so, whatever. Then we jump into the heart of the book, which is chapters 5 through 9. All right? Notice what it says. How to work with layouts and widgets. At first, the first 4 chapters, I'm going to recommend that you use the default layout, which is a constraint layout. That said, some of you are going to go, God, I hate this. All right? So I'm going to try to show you some shortcuts and ways to make it easier to use. All right? We'll get into events, themes, and styles. You can, for lack of better words, you're almost going to be like writing CSS again. Menus and preferences. Let's face it, if you're working on here, if you're working on somebody's phone, you know, you're very limited with the amount of landscape that you have anyway. All right, especially if you say it's a portrait application, you're not going to be able to make humongous menus. So we'll talk about how to make regular menus with words and also with images, because that might be easier for you to do. All right. Then we'll talk about fragments. And a fragment, for lack of better words, it's kind of a way to take your screen and bust it up into parts. We'll just leave it at that for right now. Now, chapters 10 through 12 is this newsreader app. We're going to look at it, but I'm more concerned that you understand what threads are, how to handle files, how to handle adapters, how to handle intents, how to handle services and notification, and broadcast receivers. So yeah, we may spend a period going over that particular program, but what's more important to me are the concepts that are behind that. All right? Then we go into this task list app. We'll spend more time on this. This is, I think, at least a pretty good app. So we'll talk about it. Notice we'll bring in databases. They've got SQLite. You can use literally any database you want. But I think it's important that we get into databases. All right? Tabs and custom adapters, content providers, app widgets. All right? And well before, so maybe even next month, like I said, we may do this out of turn. I don't care. But I want to go through Chapter 17, how to deploy an app, and what you have to go through, all right, what you have to go through for to put something in the App Store. Okay? What I am going to do, I'm waiting because I'm getting this in parts. Years ago, I think I told you this, years ago I taught, when I was at Blackhawk, both iOS and Android programming in the same semester. All right? You know, and you're like, wow, you want congratulations? No. But what I want to tell you is the book that I used for the iOS class, it had an app in it that they built. And it was over a chapter in the book, which was like 80 pages long. Make sense? All right. I'm getting those 80 pages sent to me over about a 2-week span because they just give me a little bit at a time because I'm doing it through this website. What I want to do is I want to put all those together when I get it all done, and I want to build that in Android. And then I want us to build that in Android. All right? Then what I'm going to probably do is take that and put it out on the App Store. That said, I will give full kudos to the person who did it in iOS. I'm not looking to make a penny on it. Anything and I have put stuff out on the App Store. Anything that I put out there, I'm putting out there for free. I'd recommend you do the same. Now, just so you know, you don't have to shake your heads, but please listen to this. The way that the App Store works, you can't put a product out there for free, then go back to that same product and say, now I'm charging for it. You're not allowed to do that. Now, you could come up with a new version or a new something, and that you can do. All right? All right. So let's just jump right into Chapter 1. Like I said, I don't plan on spending much time on this at all. Notice it says it presents background information about Android. It says it's not essential to developing apps, but it's kind of important for you to understand how everything fits together. So I don't know if you've ever heard this saying before, but it's kind of like looking at Android. It's the 35,000-foot view, you know, where you're looking at it from way up high and you can just kind of see a few things. So don't worry, there's nothing in here that'll be on a test. All right? And it says the chapter finishes by showing you how to use the Android IDE. Not very much, no. I mean, it does have like 10 pages, but it's just a beginning. The thing to realize, and again, you don't have to shake your heads, but please listen to this. This book was written, I think it's 2015 is the date on it. 2015, which means what? Which means it was written in 2014, which means it's 5 years old, which means that many of the pictures that are in here, stuff has been updated since then. So if you're looking at it, you go, why doesn't mine look like that? That's why. Because you have newer stuff. This has older stuff. Some of the stuff has changed dramatically over the last few versions, just so you're aware of that. Now, here's a big one right here, right on page 2. Android is a Linux-based operating system. Most people don't know that. What's Linux? It's free Unix. I just like to keep the definitions simple. Back when I was your age and I was a full-time programmer, I used Unix. Unix is it depends on who you are, but by and large, there is some GUI Unix now and some GUI Linux. But back when I used it, everything was console-based. People hated it. It didn't bother me one way or the other. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. All right. It says, before you begin developing apps that run on Android, it's helpful to take a moment to consider the types of devices. Well, you know what? You know this stuff. I'm not going to talk a lick about this. Other than to say, if you look up on the screen here, stuff is changing. You know, you can go now and from your phone, you can program your washer to stop or to start, that kind of thing. Much of that stuff is done in these kinds of apps. All right? Also, Android is open source. So yeah, you can grab the source and you can even customize it. I wouldn't say when you're first learning this, that would be the best thing in the world to do. All right? But it's your call. Now, types of Android apps. If you've never done this before, would you please, in your address bar, just type in Google Play Store and hit enter. And it'll come back to play.google.com. All right? And then just click the top link there. And this has got the Play Store in it. All right? And even now, just so you know this, and I'm going to talk about it in just a bit, the way that this site is set up, don't be surprised if it changes a lot in the next month or so. And I'm going to explain why in just a couple minutes. All right? The reason I'm telling you to look out there is sometimes this is a great place to look for beginning ideas. All right? I mean, I wouldn't go out there and, for example, go to games, find a really complex game and go, well, I'm going to do that. No, you're not. You're not that good, and that's no cut to you. Most of these people have spent months, if not years, working on and perfecting a product. Not 20 hours a week for about 15 weeks. I'm just telling you. All right? But it can oftentimes give you an inspiration. All right? Now, here's an example of where I got an inspiration. This is where, if I get some free time, I'm going to work on this. My wife, today's her birthday, so we may be leaving 10 minutes early. All right? But my wife is really, I can honestly say this. Yeah, it's on tape. Yeah, I get all that. She's the best person I've ever met in my life. All right? But that said, she's not the best math person I've ever met in my life. I don't know how many times, Jeff, this is $70 and it's 40% off. How much is that going to cost? I'm just telling her, I say, multiply 7 by 6. That's 42. That's what it is. But I always say I'm going to build her a very simple app where she can put in a price anywhere between $1 and $1 million and put in a percentage and then see what that number is with that percentage off. Now, is that hard? Of course not. But you'd be surprised if you took and made something like that and put it out there on the App Store, how many people would download it if it was free. Now, chances are pretty good there's already something like that out there. And that's okay. I don't want to take something that's out there and have her do that. I want to make it. All right? Do I have to? No, but I want to. All right. So, Android has a large community of developers. Yeah. Android apps are available through Google Play or third-party sites. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. You get a gold star for the day if you raise your hand. But only raise your hand if you actually know the answer to this. How many of you know what instant apps are? What are they?
That's where you can play them without downloading them?
That's right. That's what they're moving to. You won't have to download anything anymore. They're saving everything to the cloud. Not only that, you're going to get to go, and he gets the little gold star today. But what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to download like an app that either is going to disappear or just work a little. You're going to get to do the old try before you buy. I think that's really cool. The reason I'm telling you that is as soon as we bring up Android Studio, it's going to ask you, do you want instant app support? I'm going to recommend for when we start, don't check that. You're not going to make anything that's worth making into an instant app. But when you do your project, you may want to do that. All right? What you may want to do, again, this is a suggestion, is you may want to create your project and make it free, but don't put in every single bit of functionality that you think it deserves. Then after you graduate from here, work with it, give it extra functionality, make it version 2, and then charge for it. All right. And I've told you before, sorry, Colin, if you ever hear this, Colin did a game last semester. That guy busted his ass. He was working on this sucker all the time. And I think if you asked him on a scale of 1 to 10 how happy he was, he'd be pushing it to say he was a 3. I mean, there was always something. He wanted to change this. He wanted to change that. The color wasn't right. The way it moved wasn't right. Don't try to solve world hunger with your app, the one you're creating for this class. Don't try to program a game that's so freaking hard that people can't understand it. It's just not worth it. All right. History, I'm not going to give you history. The bottom line is Google bought Android in 2005. That's the history. All right? That's all that really matters. And it's been good since then. All right? Versions. Do you all know this? That the versions are named after desserts. You may know that, you may not. They'll call them sweet treats. They'll call them all sorts of stuff because I've heard people go, a lollipop's not a dessert. All right? And I'm like, when people talk to me like that, I'm like, you're an ass. Okay? Fine. Whatever you say, it's not a dessert. Now, if you look right here, this URL that's right there, I'm going to grab this. And no, whoops, it is not a 5-year-old URL. So I'm going to copy it. Hopefully it'll let me paste it in here. Looks like it. What this shows you, and you're going to see it also when we start working on your apps. But just so you see this, this tells you basically, this is called the distribution dashboard. And it's telling you with the different versions how many people are still using that version. Does that make sense? Now, you might look at this and go, you know what? Screw all of you. I'm using Oreo. because it's got really cool stuff. And what does that mean? That means that 21.5% of people can use all that functionality, right? Which means 78.5% cannot. All right? So you go, well, okay, I'm going the other way then. I'm going back to gingerbread here. But then if you've got additional functionality, it doesn't mean they can use it, because if something was created in Lollipop, it'll have backward compatibility to gingerbread, but it won't probably be able to do whatever they set it up to do in Lollipop. Does that make sense? So it's a two-edged sword, as the saying goes. All right. And that thing is updated all the time, just so you know that. All right. Now, this is about the only thing in this chapter that I think is worth going over. It's not going to let me shrink it down very much. But this is on, I don't know what page it is, page 13. This is the Android stack, so to speak. Down at the bottom is stuff you'll never touch. That should make sense to you. That's basically that stuff under the control of the operating system. All right. I'm not saying if you go, well, I might have to load a driver. Yeah, but you're not going to program the driver. All right, not that I know of. You wouldn't want to. All right. So that's the Linux kernel. Then up above that are the libraries. You may use some of that. There may be some kind of a library that you need to use to do your stuff. Now, I may have told you this before. I may not have. But back in the days, remember how long ago that was we were doing Java? All right, back in the days of Java, one thing I mentioned to you that we never really talked about, but basically, to my knowledge, all computers in the last 20 years have got some software built into them that's called the JVM, the Java Virtual Machine. And that's what makes sure that if you've got Java code, that it will compile it into bytecode, then interpret it so you can run it. All right? Why am I telling you that? Because in Android, if you look over here on the screen and you look towards the right in that brown box, it's called the Dalvik Virtual Machine. It's set up a little bit differently. And I believe Dalvik, I could be wrong, I think it's a town in Denmark. I don't know what the significance is, but if you are interested in more of that, you can read the previous page, because they give you some more of this. Then you go up. Now this is you here, okay? This is you. So this is stuff you could potentially, interface with that on a regular basis. Does all that make sense? That was kind of quick, but just so you heard it. All right? And there's more. They always give you a nice summary at the bottom of each one of these pages on the right. Again, how programs are compiled and run, okay? You've got a lot of stuff that you got to think about in Android that you don't have to think about in regular Java, okay? Would you agree with this? If I built myself a 50,000-line payroll program in Java, would you agree with this? It probably wouldn't be designed to run on my phone. Would you agree with that? I probably wouldn't run it. I'm not saying I couldn't. I'm saying I probably wouldn't. On the other hand, I might have a 50,000-line game that I'm playing on my phone all the time. Do you agree with that? Okay, things you got to think about. Okay, what if I'm playing that game and my phone rings? How are you going to handle that? All right? And it might not sound like it's a real big thing. Do you want to pause the program? Do you want to stop the program? Do you want to pause it, but if you're on the phone for an hour, do you still want it paused? Etc. Those are all things you've got to think about. All right? When you set up a game, do you want that game only to run in landscape mode? All right? And it's very easy to turn it off working in portrait mode. We'll get into that probably tomorrow already. All right? So they explain all this stuff. Much of it I just gave you a very, very short summary of, but it's on the bottom here of page 15. But it's worth reading. It's good stuff. All right. Did your thing ever finish?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let's quick go over this. This is an intro to Android Studio. You don't have to bring it up yet. But you are going to see a screen that's going to look very similar to this one on your screen right now, or on page, 617 in the book. Now, you won't have anything over here. Why? Why won't you have anything over there? Because you haven't written any apps yet. Guess what? I uninstalled everything I have, so I'm exactly where you are. I did that on purpose. I don't normally do that, but I did it anyway. All right? So if I screw up, I'm going to teach you how to screw up. I'm not going to try to do that, but we'll see. Now when you look over here, what do we have? Start a new Android Studio project. Open an existing Android Studio project. Import an Android code example. Check out project from version control. Import project through Eclipse or someplace else. Configure and docs and how-tos. I'm not going to lie to you. The last two, never looked at in my life. Never looked at the docs. Never looked at the how-tos. I don't even know if that's still on there, but I've never looked at them. I never looked at the configure. All right. I have taken projects that I built, Java projects I built in Eclipse, and used that import project and brought them right into Android Studio. Made 0 changes on them, and they ran right away. Why are they doing that? Because before Android Studio, the #1 editor/IDE of choice was Eclipse. Many people still use it. All right. The checkout project from version control, again, I'm going to explain to you or tell you real quick my ignorance. All right. Are you going to want to take all your stuff and put it out to Bitbucket? I don't know. All right. But most of the time, unless you've got tons of images, most of your Java files, have you noticed how small they are? All right. You should be able, when we have a test or a homework, just double click zip your file and email it to me. All right. Or your folder, I should say. All right. Open an existing one. Yeah, you're going to want to do that a lot. Start a new one. Yeah, you're going to want to do that a lot. It'll be the first two that you'll use almost all the time. Now, like what we've seen in IntelliJ, an Android Studio project will have a top-level directory with stuff underneath it. Not only that, when we get into it, there's different modes that you can go into. I'm going to do the best I can to show you, all right, and not leave anything out. Like I said, if I do, so if I go home tonight and I forgot to tell them about this, that's how we might start tomorrow, just so you know, all right? When you start Android Studio for the first time, it might display a welcome page. It might not. I don't know, because I haven't brought mine up yet since I uninstalled and reinstalled, all right? The left side of the welcome page, you already saw that. It shows you what you've got open. The right side basically has got where you're going to work. All right. So when you look on the screen here, this is pretty much what your screen is going to look like. And you're like, oh my God, it's busy as hell. Yeah, it is. I will tell you, see this thing here that says component tree? Everybody see this? I know that the last time I used it, they had moved it down here. Now, I don't know where it's going to be here. I don't really care. We'll deal with it. I believe that you can move this stuff around. I've never tried to. But if you look on your screen, please, this right here, this is called, I think, your project viewer, and it shows you all the stuff that you have. Now, what I'm going to recommend to you is once we look at that, there's going to be a bunch of stuff in there. Don't touch it. It's very easy to screw up one of these projects by just playing with the wrong file. All right, so we're going to look at that. This over here, if you look on the screen, basically this is called your palette, and essentially it's your toolbox. All right, this will be your working area over here. All right, basically it's right in here. And over here, there's a bunch of stuff you can do here. For instance, right now it's showing you what your project would look like in a Nexus 4. If you click the down arrow, they'll show you, like, for example, iPad. And then you can see what it would look like as an iPad. The ones that are over here, the stuff down here, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can go from portrait to landscape, landscape to portrait, etc. This right here is, like I said, they've moved this. This right here, do you remember? I'm asking you this question. Do you remember when we used your properties window and you had a property, there was a, excuse me, whatever your current property was, you could click an arrow and it would show you all of the other controls you have. That's what this does, is it shows you every control that's in there. I am going to recommend a certain way that you name things, and I'm not going to recommend the way this book shows, and I'll show you why. When I get done, if you're like, screw you, Jeff, I want to do it my way, do it your way. It's totally fine. But I want to explain to you why I do things the way I do them, okay? All right. This is your properties window. Not going to look very much like the properties window in VB, just so you know. They have changed this, at least the last version I used, this properties window that you see down here, it now took up the whole screen. When I say the whole screen, I mean this part of the whole screen, top to bottom. All right, so you're going to see all that in just a couple minutes. Now, take a look on the screen. In Android, an activity defines one screen of an app. Most books equate an activity to a form, or whatever you'd call that, one screen. A layout. There are 3 different ways that you can build yourself an app. We're going to go over all 3 of them. All right? Which one do you use? We're going to go over all 3 of them. There's no way in heck I can ever tell which way you used. And if it works, I would never ask you which way you used. So I showed you the project tool window. Much of this stuff, if it's not showing, you can double click it and it'll open up. You'll see that when we get going. The big thing is, please look up on the screen right here. See this? These are the 2 files you're going to have open most of the time. When we first start, we're only going to have a single screen. Everybody hear me? We're going to have just one screen. I'm going to give you an assignment tomorrow where you're going to have 2 screens. I'm going to let you figure out how to do it. I've got instructions for you, but I'm going to let you follow those. If you look up, though, on the screen, this is straight Java. Now, the way you write the Java for Android is different than what we've been doing. But much of the stuff will be the same. Not everything, but much of it will be the same. This right here, see this where it says activity tip XML? Everybody see that? That file, if you click it, by default, it's going to bring up this right here. But when you bring this up, this is what's called, see this down here? Design mode. You can also, instead of writing it by dragging and dropping controls, you can go into what's called text mode. I'm going to show you that, and I'm going to show you the regular Java mode. And again, no, it's do you understand how to do it? It's not, oh, you should do it this way or you should do it this way. All right? Every single control that you put up on the screen that you want to manipulate programmatically, please look up on the screen. What you do is in this class, typically at the beginning of your class, or I'll show you where, you will create a variable of that type. All right? So you can see we've got an edit text. An edit text is like a text box. A text view is like a label. People have always told me, then why did they call it a label view? I'll tell you what, write your own language, call it whatever the heck you want. All right? Buttons are buttons, etc. This thing with shared preferences, we'll get into that. That's, again, what happens if your phone rings, etc. We'll talk about all that stuff. That should look pretty familiar to you. All right, you've done stuff like this already. Okay? All right. They tell you how you can remove files, delete files. That's not really and truly right now that big a thing. Before we go and run this, we're going to have to. Oh, did they show it back here? I don't think they do. No. We're going to create an emulator today. I don't care what kind of a machine you emulate. I'm going to grab, because it's new, I'm going to grab a Pixel phone. And I'm going to use that for my emulation. And we'll run through that stuff. All right. When you do this, if you look on the screen, sometimes, if you please look on the screen, this stuff up here, when you highlight it, it'll tell you you've got to download something. What may end up frustrating the hell out of you is Android sometimes daily will do updates. And it's always recommended, because most of those updates, if they do them daily, it's because they found a bug someplace and they fixed it. If you get something that comes up on your screen, the recommendation, if it says you've got an update, run it right away. All right? Now, if you say, well, I'm not going to. I can't make you do anything. And even if I could, I wouldn't. All right? But that's the recommendation all the time. So we'll create an Android, or an emulator, rather. And when we run it, this is the program that you do in chapters 2 and 3. If you look up on the screen here, it's a simple tip calculator. So you put an amount in here. All right, basically you set this up. I don't remember if there's a button hiding behind there or not. But so it would say 3460, 15%. So what? It would be about, I don't know, $5.50, let's say. So it would say $34.60, $5.50, and then $41.20 or something like that. All right? That's it for that chapter. That was unbelievably fast. And yeah, I did it unbelievably fast on purpose because I wanted us to get in here. All right. So let me just, I'm going to get over to Chapter 4 just so when we get to that point later, we can do this. Section 2, there. So what we will cover in a little bit, if you look on the screen, how to test and how to debug an app. All right? You can probably already figure it out, but I'll show you how to put in breakpoints, how to step over, step into, and step through code. There won't be a test on that, but I'll expect that after we go through this, you'll know how to use the debugger. And if you go, I still don't understand it, the only way you get better, it's like anything else, is to practice. All right, so the time has come. So what I'd like everybody to do, please, is start up Android. In fact, before you even do that, why don't we do this? Let's go and on our desktop, let's make a folder and call it Android. All right, I'm going to see if I can just get rid of all this stuff here. It's not all going to move, but most of it will. I honestly do not remember if, like with IntelliJ, we now have to create a folder underneath the Android for the project we're going to put in, or if we don't. So to try to make sure that it works the way you want it to work, again, come in on your desktop, put in a new folder, call it Android. Then in that Android folder, this will be our first project. Okay, we're going to right mouse click, and we're going to create another new folder, and I'm going to call this Adderx3. If you don't know what that means, you will by the time we get done. All right? So I created an Android folder on my desktop, and underneath that, underneath the Android folder, I created another folder that I called Adderx3 with no spaces in it. All right? Can you put spaces in it? Yes. It can be problematic, some of this stuff. All right? And if you don't think that's true, I don't know if I told you guys about this. The site for my friend Tom for his dog sitting service went live yesterday, and we had problems with it. And tell me if you agree with me or not, because I actually got into a friendly argument with a help person from Bluehost. Okay? Luke, my student who made the site, I had to make some changes to it, but he called one of his files index final.html. And when I converted it to PHP, I stupidly kept that as a big F. Okay? But where I referenced it in code in one place, I referenced it with a little f. It broke my site. And I told the guy, it doesn't matter. And he goes, if you want, I'll give you a screenshot of the 404 error that came up. He said, I manually changed it for you, and now it works. All right? Touche. I mean, when somebody says basically, hey, I do this for a living, shut the hell up, that's what I should do. All right. So I've got this Adderx3. Now, with that done, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start up Android Studio. If you haven't put the icon either on your desktop or down in your tray on the bottom, I'd recommend doing that. All right. Otherwise, you're going to have to come in here and type in Android Studio all the time. You want to do that? Hey, that's your call. Now, since I already had Android Studio, and I uninstalled and reinstalled, my guess is my screen is going to look just like yours. But it may not. I did bring it up yesterday just to throw a quick little project in there to see, make sure it worked. So yeah, this is all stuff. This thing, this who are you? I did that last year. I'll show you that towards the end of the semester. It's got a lot of code in it. All right? Okay. So what my question is this what yours looks like except you don't have this? All right. So we want to start a new Android project. All right? The first thing that you see, again, if yours is looking different than mine, you got to tell me. I can't see anyone's machine. Virtually 100% of the stuff we do as a class in here will always choose empty activity, which is the default. You can look through here and you'll notice there's a bunch of other ones. Okay? Some of them I have worked with, most of them I have not. So if you're not sure, it should have the gray bar under it already, but you can just click on it too, and that'll highlight it. All right, and then click Next. Now I'm going to tell you a few things about what's in here. Don't worry about typing anything in right now. All right? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this name to Adderx3. There it is fine to have blank spaces. All right? By default, which means unless you hear otherwise, if I were to go and save that app right now, that would be its name. Does that make sense? If I go and put it in the App Store, you can go back and change it later. So let's say I put in Adderx3 and I didn't put any blank spaces in it, and I say that looks really crummy. You can go back later and change it. All right? All right, the second thing. Remember this? I'm going to recommend you use the same package name you've been using. If you don't want to, don't do it. All right? Some people use like example.com or whatever. All right? And either way, it's fine. Now, what you may find here, if you look on the screen, please. If yours comes out and it looks just like this, as opposed to Adderx3 .jpscott.rankin.edu, so if yours is backwards, you probably want to flip it for your next one you do. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is, I don't know if this is going to reverse your package name or not reverse it. This screen is different than the way it was when I taught this class a year ago. Much different. They showed you right underneath here, it said in gray, your package will be saved as, and it showed you. I don't know right now what it's going to do. Here's where you want to save it. Well, again, I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to my desktop. And I'm under Android. And under Android, I'm going to put in /Adderx3. All right, so that's what I'm going to put in. Your path may be different because I don't know how your system's set up. You're right. Okay. And see how it found it? Thank you. All right, so I'm going to click OK. Now it's saying then to build it right here. Now, again, please look up on the screen. And it says language. If we have time at the end of the semester, I'd like to spend up to a week going over Kotlin with you. All right? Let's just pretend for a second. It's near the end of the semester, and Evan's found his dream job as a Java programmer. He's applied and he's got an interview. I can almost bet you that you will be asked at that interview, do you know Kotlin? You will not learn it in a week, but we can go in and create an app or two with it so you can see the differences. All right? But we're going to just keep it on Java for right now. Now, please look on the screen again. See where it says minimum API? And it says 19. So it says by default, that's going to run on 95.3% of devices. Again, you can click down here and you can move it up to Android 2.3 Gingerbread, where it'll eventually run almost on like 99.9% of devices. This is my like it or don't like it, agree or don't agree. I look at it like IE and how, for example, Bootstrap doesn't support anything, Bootstrap 4 doesn't support anything below IE10 anymore. You're like, if you're one of those X% who still has it, screw you up, get a newer version. And I'm thinking 95.3 is pretty damn good. Again, if you don't agree, you can change that. All right, so we're going to click Finish. It's going to take just a minute. It's going to start building stuff for you. And you look at it and go, geez, that's not everything. Yeah, whatever. Just give it a second, because if you look up on the screen there, it's still building, and it's syncing. There's a lot of internal files here that have a lot of stuff they have to do. So it may not come up, especially if it's your first time, it may take up to a minute or two. What you'll notice is after that, it'll come up much faster. But mine, pretty much like yours, it's still coming. Down here, if you look way here, right over here, that's your status bar, and it's letting you know while building and stuff is going on. All right, you can see now loading, boom. All right, now yours may not look like this. If this thing right here, see this? If this is missing right there, that's where you click to open it and close it. Try it just to make sure it works. It does it. All right? That, again, is your project window. Plus, if you look on the screen, you can shrink it. So you can shrink it down to almost nothing if you want to. All right? It's very similar to the Solution Explorer that you had in VB, in Visual Studio. I'm going to draw a lot of comparisons because I think you guys all remember that because you just worked with it last semester. All right? Look up on the screen, please. Here's where you can set different views. See where it says Android right here? Everybody see this? I recommend keeping it there. But if you click the down arrow, there's a bunch more things that you can select. I'm not going to go through any of them. You can do that on your own if you want to. I would recommend keeping it on Android. All right. Now, if you look up on the screen here, notice it did say package edu Rankin, so it was just like that. See that? So if you want it to be the other way, you make your package, if you want it the other way, jpscott.rankin.edu.adderx. Don't change it in this file, but from now on. I don't really care if it looks just like this or doesn't. It doesn't mean anything to me one way or the other. All right. Again, looking on the screen here, you'll notice you got a Java folder. Then there's your package. All right? And then underneath that, it's like that is the package. There's main activity. That file right there is this file. Does that make sense? That file right there is this file. Now, if you would, please open up where it says manifests. Right there. And go ahead and double-click that file. Android manifest.xml. That opens up another file. What file? It opens up what's called your manifest file. And this tells you a few things, such as when the thing launches, how do you want it to launch? Keep it simple. This is saying, hey, our main activity is the way you want to launch this program. Okay? There'll be other things that we'll add in here later. You can change some of the stuff that's in here. Okay? You can specify in this file that you want your program to run portrait only or landscape only. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do here. I'm just going to click the X for now. I don't need the file anymore. Just closed it. All right. Then please look in here. We're going to pretend that this Android folder right here and this one, you're best off, pretend they don't exist. We're not going to be doing any unit tests, okay? Now, if Paul does some and he puts information out there, I'll do it with you. I'm looking at it that if we can go through all these chapters and we can write upwards of 20 apps, you're going to be pretty frickin' prepared, all right, once you get out of here. All right, so you can close those two. The generated Java, okay, you should never have to touch that. All right, what's left is really important. We're going to go over this, then we're taking a break. Notice if you open up Res. Res stands for resources. Okay? Tomorrow, we're going to create, I've got to create it myself first, but hopefully I'll have time between now and then. We're going to create a very simple program that we're going to have a real fat guy. All right, and we'll just we'll pick a ping that's a picture, not an actual photograph, but a drawing of a real fat guy. You're going to click a button, and that person's going to change and become a real thin guy. Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to do something like that. Well, why am I telling you that? Because the drawable and the MIP map that you see right here, that's where we're going to end up holding between those two folders, all of our images. All right, and if you look under drawable right now, it's got launcher background and launcher foreground. So it's got some stuff in there already that automatically gets put in for you. If you look at MIP map, okay, these two folders work in unison with one another. We'll get into that, just not this second. All right, so I'm just going to right now just have those that are like this. This right here is two more important things than we're breaking. See where it says layout? Everybody see this? Click that. See where it says activity main? That is this right here. If this ever gets, you ask, geez, where the hell did my file go? You come down to layout and you double click on activity main. See that? Do one more thing for me, please. Right now we're in design mode. Go all the way down to the bottom. See where it says text? Click there. That's pure XML. We're going to make some changes later. We're going to change both the XML, and then we'll come back and we'll change the properties window, or vice versa. So you can see when you change one how the other changes. I would recommend that you do as little work when you're starting out in this file in text mode as possible. Once you get more comfortable with it, yeah, go here and knock yourself out. All right, so I'm going to go back to design mode. Finally, because I want to teach you the right way to do things. If you look under values, so I'm going to close the layout and I'm going to open up values. There are 3 files in there. All right. The first one says colors.xml. This is where you can do things like, I'm going to double click it and bring it up. You can notice you can set colors. There are some ones that are set by default. My guess is, knowing some of you, and you seem to be very creative, that when you do your own app that you'll present at the end of the year, you're not going to want these colors. So you can change them to something else. You can add more colors. We'll talk about how to do all that, just not this second. All right. Then the next thing is strings. This is usually the hardest thing for people to understand. Virtually everything we put onto our system, even like the text that goes on a button, we're going to put in this file. This file holds every string you have in your program. And it does it for what's called localization purposes. So if you decide, so Tony creates this app and it's unbelievably popular. And for some reason he's got a friend who says, you know what, I speak Spanish. Man, if you put this sucker in, in Spanish, you can do a lot of that because all you do is you add another resources file that's got ESP on it for España, for Spain. Okay, so this is what we'll use. This we get into when it's around chapter 8 or 9. It says styles, and you're like, that's what we just had. Yeah, it's because we have no styles in there yet. This is, like I said, very similar to what we'll use to do the equivalent of almost adding CSS. Now, what you got there very quickly was the nickel tour. I don't expect you to remember a lick of it, all right? But what we're going to do is, now it's 127, we're going to come back at 145. We're going to take this, what we have right here, we're going to make some changes to it, and ideally, within an hour, if not sooner, we're going to have a working app. All right, so again, it's 127. Let's take a break. Come back, please, at 145.